Ladies and gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen, are you ready? Are you ready? Get ready, dog. Get ready.
Thanks for joining us for another episode of the Rocket Networker. I always like to begin with a silly networking story. Today's story is about building your personal network by connecting with alumni from high school and college. When I was 10 years old, my older brother played football for the University of Toledo Rockets. At age 10, during the summer, I would ride my bike to the University of Toledo to watch practice and gather footballs for the players. Little did I know that later in my life, Rocket football players would become an important part of my personal and professional network. While not their teammate, we share a common bond through our love of Rocket football and a common connection through the University of Toledo. Over the past 40 years, I've had the privilege of interacting with Rocket football alums across the United States and around the world. Their stories and success have always amazed me. And that's where today's Rocket Networker guest comes in. Ryan Huzjak played quarterback for the University of Toledo Rockets. Today, Ryan is Vice President of Sales and Marketing for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Ryan, thanks for making time in your busy schedule to join us on the Rocket Networker podcast.
My pleasure. Looking forward to talking to you.
Good deal. So, hey, where are you sitting right now, by the way? I'm in my illustrious office in Toledo, Ohio. Where are you at?
This is my office here in Pittsburgh. I'm looking at the convergence of the three rivers here and Acrisure Stadium out my window, just a few blocks away. So in my office.
All right, we're going to have some fun here talking about life with the Pittsburgh Steelers. But before we get there, I want to take you way back in time because the Rocket Networkers about informal conversations. I call them the threads of connectivity, little things that connect us together, like hometown and high school and that. So let's go there. Take us back to your hometown. Where'd you grow up?
Well, I moved around quite a bit growing up. I was actually born in Denver, Colorado, and my dad's job at Aramark sort of moved us throughout the country. I spent my junior high years in Chicago, and then right before high school, I moved to Northville, Michigan. It's about an hour straight north of Toledo. I went to high school at Northville High School. So yeah, and then a couple stops in between.
Nice. Now, tell us a little bit more about your family. You mentioned your father, Ned, but tell us about your family.
Yeah, so my father, actually my stepfather. So my mom and dad were divorced when I was really young, and I was with my mother. My mom was a director at a child care center, and my older sister, Cara, is 4 years older than me. The funny story is my best friend in preschool, in kindergarten, is now my stepbrother. So my stepbrother and stepsister were at the same, elementary, actually pre-elementary school. That my mom was the director at a child care center. And so they met, my parents met. And then, sort of, I got to be every kid's dream gets to be brothers with his best friend. So he was my best friend and was my brother. And then, worked out great. My younger sister, the four of us, really, that's my family, my core family. And that, my dad's job is the one that moved us around. But the cool part was my brother was also a really good athlete, very fast, and he ended up being my wide receiver in high school. So it worked out pretty well.
That's pretty cool. That's great. And this is, by the way, when we're out there networking, professionally and personally, people talk about elevator pitches and all these great things, but at the end of the day, business is about relationships and it's fun to talk about the Pittsburgh Steelers, but it's fun to talk about hometown and your brother and things of that nature. I think that makes our day go a little bit easier, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. We were lucky, we moving around when you're in the moment as a young kid, really every age, like going into junior high, moving to Chicago was tough, but having my brother, next to me, with me, going to school made it a lot easier. And then certainly we moved, right before high school started. So going into a new place, a new school, right. And entering into high school is a tough time to move, but having him there, and we always felt like we had at least one good friend. Yeah. So that was great. Yeah.
Yeah. That made the transition a little bit easier.
Definitely.
So let's go there a little bit. You started talking about high school. take us into high school, and where did you go to high school? What's the name of the school?
Northville High School in Northville, Michigan. Real nice town. And, the funny part is, I think back to, that first classroom I sat in. This is going to be crazy, but my very first classroom I sat in Northville, actually, my wife was in that class. So I met my wife, Beth, in Northville. She was born and raised in Northville. We met, right there as freshmen in high school. And she was in the very first class that I was in when we made that transition to the new school. But it's a great town, good town, and saw some really good friends there. Really enjoyed growing up in suburban Detroit. Great place to live.
Well, that's kind of neat. All right, so we've got the connection now to your stepbrother in high school football, and now we've drawn a thread of connectivity to your wife. Now, my wife and I are high school sweethearts as well.
Mm-hmm.
I shouldn't have guessed that. Did you date in high school?
We were, yeah. So it's a wandering story a little bit. We dated and went to homecoming as freshmen, and I actually keep the picture of us at the high school homecoming picture on my phone because I think my wife and I were the same height, and I think she's probably 5'6" with big hair, and I was probably 5'7", but we were the same height. We went to homecoming together as freshmen, and then we didn't date all through high school, and we didn't reconnect until the end of high school as seniors. So about basketball season of our senior year, we came back together, and honestly, we've been dating ever since. So that's since 1992.
That's cool. Yeah. So hey, you got to be careful. I made an assumption there.
We were high school sweethearts.
I got in trouble, especially if your wife watches us. She's like, "Why didn't you correct the guy?" Hey.
I got my facts straight. Don't worry. Yeah, I got my facts straight.
Yeah, that's great, man. That's awesome. So you've got sports in high school. Now you referenced basketball. So what sports did you play? Obviously football.
Yeah. I played in high school. I played football in the fall. I played basketball in the winter, and the first couple of years I played baseball in high schold, and then I switched over to run track the last 2 years, really because I wanted to lift and work on my speed and things of that nature in the spring rather than play baseball. Coach at the time believe it or not, wasn't big into lifting weights, so wanted to go a different direction and ended up running track the last couple of years.
I gotcha. So that's cool. Now, obviously you played college football and high school football, but of the sports, like, which did you really like? Did you have a passion for football, or was that just kind of?
Oh, I love football. I mean, I would say though my first love was probably basketball. Growing up when I was a little kid, I loved basketball. I loved the Denver Nuggets and grew up following the Nugs when I was a little kid, and then quickly transitioned to football. I mean, I didn't play tackle football until what must have been 6th or 7th grade. So, wasn't even able to play. I always wanted to play. But that moment when I first started playing tackle football, put my helmet on, I fell in love instantly. At that point, it's a funny story. I lived in Chicago, and I think it was my first or second year of tackle football was 1985. So we happened to have season tickets to the Bears down at Soldier Field. And our high school that we were at was Wheaton North High School, and a quarterback named Kent Graham was the quarterback. Uh-huh. So I tell this story. On Friday nights, we went down to the high school stadium and watched Wheaton North. They went undefeated and won the state championship. On Saturday, we went to the Pop Warner Field, Little Wheaton Rams. We went undefeated and won the championship. And on Sunday, we went down to Soldier Field. And the only game any team I was affiliated with lost that year was the Monday night game against the Dolphins. So that sort of cemented my love of football that year. I just felt like every team that I was going to be involved with or follow was just going to win the championship. Now, it's been downhill ever since, but it was a good year to start things off for sure.
I get that. I understand that. Well, it's interesting when you talk about that Chicago Bears Dolphins game. I've been a Dolphins fan since I was born. I mean, literally, became a fan when I was probably 5 years old in 1969. And there was a defensive back for the University of Toledo Rockets that was on the second year of the undefeated teams, right? He left his senior year and was drafted by the Miami Dolphins and played in a couple Super Bowls and then went on. I think he played there about 10 years, and Curtis Johnson is his name. So he's a Rocket. That's how I fell in love with the Miami Dolphins. And it's not in the screenshot here, but I have a Miami Dolphins football behind me.
Yeah, I can see it over there. Yeah, I got you. I noticed that. Yeah.
Yeah. So don't hold that against me, because we got the whole Pittsburgh thing. Now we got Chicago, and right. So but that game I'll remember for the rest. Any Miami fan will remember that game forever, because that was one of those games that saved the win streak for the Dolphins. So
yeah, it did, and that was a heck of a team. I went to every game that year, preseason, playoff, every game that year. It's only year I've ever done that, other than working in the NFL. But it was a pretty cool experience.
Oh yeah, that's a great memory. See, that's why I love the conversations like this, because these are the things that engage us and build trust and just and fun. By the way, they're fun. Right? To just laugh and smile about things, right?
I haven't thought about that in a little while, actually.
All right. Well, there you go.
Yeah.
All right. So now you're in high school. Let's get toward the time in high school where you're starting to think, or maybe even be coached to think that you could make it in college. How did that thought process happen? Like transition from high school ball to thinking, hey, I could do this in college.
I was a little bit of a late bloomer. I was actually fortunate enough to start as a quarterback as a sophomore at Northville. But I think if I go back and think about, I think I was maybe 5'10", 135 pounds, maybe a little less than that. I was not big. And so, it was a good experience. I could throw it and I was doing fine. But between my sophomore and junior year, I had a big growth spurt. So I think I came back the next year as a junior and I was over 6 feet tall and, probably 175, 180 pounds. So I had a big growth spurt between my sophomore and junior year. So once I hit my junior year and I was just a little bit bigger, first of all, that very first game, my junior year, I felt like I was playing in someone else's body, which was a strange thing.
Yeah.
But at that point, I started to get some letters and recruiting and went to a couple camps in between my junior and senior year. And so at that point, I felt like I had a decent shot. I don't remember the exact moment, but it sort of comes to you that between that junior and senior year when you start going to camps and hearing from college coaches at that point in time. And so that's when I stepped into my senior year. I was excited about having the opportunity to play.
That's pretty cool. So now you're being recruited, and what schools are recruiting? Do you remember? I mean, it's been a long time ago. I mean, what do you remember?
Yeah, it's funny. I actually, I've got kids in college now, so we talk about it sometimes. Some of them are playing sports, but I had a lot of the Ivy Leagues were recruiting me at the time. They came in at pretty good grades and good test scores. So I think they felt like I could do well there. And, as an 18-year-old kid, I wasn't interested, to be quite honest with you. I was trying to play, big time football.
Oh, you mean the NFL, right? You're going to go.
Yeah. And I was, so the bigger schools that were on me were Stanford, Cal, Northwestern, again, good academic schools. And then all the MAC schools that were around the area. Eastern, Western, Central, Miami, Toledo. I hadn't really heard from them at the time. Didn't hear them till later. Cincinnati was recruiting me pretty hard at that time too. And then I was heavily considering Northwestern. But the interesting thing was, I look back on my perspective. The high school that I went to, Northville, we traditionally were not a good football school, good academic school, but had never even made the state playoffs. As a high school qualifier, right? So we were sort of, I felt like spent a lot of time sort of being the underdog. We had played some really good teams and, had some good years, and we went to the state semifinals one year. So we had some good years, but I sort of had the perspective that I wanted to go and not be an underdog every week. I just was tired of that. I wanted to go play with very talented players. I wanted to go play in a great program where, really, honestly, I wanted to win a championship. That was my focus, was to win a championship. So, even Northwestern, I was sort of lukewarm on that. And the other schools that I didn't feel like I on a normally basis would be a favorite or have the equal or more talent. I just wasn't all that interested. I was very focused in the football side of things. And so that was my initial sort of pass at it, was go play for a great team and go win a championship.
That's very interesting. So take us to Toledo then. Who recruited you?
It was Dean Pease recruited me. He was the coach that was responsible for my geographic area. And then Coach Pinkel. Coach Pinkel actually, it was his first year. second season, but first full recruiting class. And, his background, for those who don't know, Coach was the offensive coordinator at Washington and had coached some really great quarterbacks in his time. So he really recruited me personally. When I went on my visit, I stayed back. My parents actually went home, and I stayed with Coach Pinkel for a few hours, and then he drove me home after the visit. We just spent a lot of time together. So Dean Pease actually, he was a long time, very successful coach after Toledo, became an NFL coach. I used to see him really every year. He was a coach for the Ravens
Who are
for a
you?
number of years.
You're breaking up when you were saying that.
Yeah,
Who was?
Coach Pease, Dean Pease.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
Dean Pease was a very successful coach. And so those two guys together,
Yep.
Dean Pease and Coach Pinko, were as impressive as you could be in terms of coaches that I wanted to play for. So instantly, when they started recruiting me, coming to my basketball games, I felt very, very comfortable with them. And then, other folks on campus like Clint Longnecker and others were a big part of my recruitment. I got, to be very close with him, and my parents really, I think, bonded with him and really liked what he said about the business community in Toledo. And so it was a great fit for me.
That's neat. That's a great story. I forgot. Obviously Gary Pinkel's a legend in Rocket history, and we just saw him when he was inducted in the College Football Hall of Fame here 2 years ago.
2 years ago, yep.
What a great guy. What a great guy. Big fan of Gary's.
Mm-hmm.
So now you come to Toledo. So you're at Toledo. We know that you played football for Toledo, but take us through the University of Toledo and your experience, but not on the football side. Just talk about school and just life as a student at the University of Toledo for you.
Yeah, I mean, I loved the environment. I was ready at the time to, I know you said don't talk about football, but to have football be a huge part of my experience, and
right.
A big part of that is my teammates and being there with other sort of guys like me who are approaching it from all different parts of the country, who are coming together. Really, when you're a football player, you arrive before class starts. So we were on campus by ourselves, in Parks Tower, right behind the Glass Bowl, and just started figuring things out. It's a tough transition. It's hard work. It's not easy to balance, all the commitments for football and the strength training, and then ultimately the academics. But for me, it was a great experience, not only in, just forming bonds with some great teammates I still talk to today, but also great support, physically, with my diet and all the things we needed. And then ultimately there was, for me, the academics. I was a business major. So it was something that I enjoyed, something that I was a person that I'll be honest, I didn't love spending a lot of time studying. I didn't like all the extra time. So my theory was just go to class. And so I don't know that I ever missed one class in my entire time at
Nice.
University of Toledo. I was sort of the mind that if I went to every class and I engaged with the professor in that environment, then it'd be hard for them not to give me a pretty good grade, because if they're a good teacher, I'm going to learn. And so I'll be honest, I didn't put a ton of extra time into it. I stayed on top of my studies. I got all my assignments done. But for me, it was about engaging in the classroom and going and getting to know those people and professors and getting engaged. And that, I felt like, was my key to success academically. My grades were fine. And I learned a lot in the process, but my focus was really on the classroom environment. And some kids get caught up in the habits of, trying to skip class and cram later and all. I just wasn't a big stay up all night and cram guy. I was more, I'm going to learn the material along the way and do the papers and do the assignments and learn and take the test. That's sort of where I was coming from. And I think it worked out well.
That's just such great advice. It's interesting. One of my next questions was, if you could give advice to high school or college kids, knowing what you know now, right? If you could give advice to them, but I don't need to ask that question because you just gave the best possible answer to that, which is the truth.
Yeah.
Go to class, sit in the front row if you can, engage the professor on the topic that they themselves are passionate about, show that you committed to them and they'll commit to you, right?
100%. Yeah. And by the way, I mean, I'm hard pressed for any professor to give you a poor or even an average grade if you're doing that and engaging in the classroom environment. So
Yeah.
I would 100% give that advice. And by the way, in terms of the overall time commitment, it's probably lower
You're
than
right.
you would spend if you skip class and try to get caught up on your own. You probably spend less time in total by doing it that way. At least I certainly pass that advice on to my kids.
Sage advice, man. Excellent. That's perfect. So let me ask you this now. We're going through college, you're playing football, you're doing well. I want to go to your senior year.
Okay.
I think it was, correct me if I'm wrong. I think it was your senior year when you led the Rockets to, I think it was the Las Vegas Bowl. Is that correct? Is my memory right?
That's my junior year. My
Junior,
junior year, we did
okay.
that. Yeah. So we went undefeated. We had an undefeated regular season, and we won the MAC championship, and got the opportunity to go to the Las Vegas Bowl.
So tell us about the Las Vegas Bowl. Tell just your memories. Because I mean, it was a great ending to the story, but I'm going to let you tell the ending of the story.
Man, it was awesome. It was so awesome. It really was. I mean, I have such fond memories of that time. Being there, we had played our opponent, Nevada, previously during the year. So just as a coincidence, we played out in Nevada. I think it was the second or third game of the season, and that trip was from a lot of my teammates. It was the first time ever flying on an airplane.
Right.
So that was an awesome experience. And then to get to go back out and spend, I believe it was 3 or 4 days, if not longer, out in Las Vegas, was really pretty cool. I mean, I was pretty hyper focused. I remember on really wanting to play well. I was less focused on the buffet and all the other stuff. But I just figured we're going to be on ESPN. We had played this team previously, and we got a lot of turnovers and we won the game, but they felt like it was lucky. So I felt like we're going to have to play really well. I think there was 3 NFL players, 2 or 3 drafted on their defense.
Wow.
So this was a good unit, and they were going to come and really try to shut down our running game. So me as a quarterback, I felt like I had to play really well for us to win, and I felt like we were going to be on ESPN. So all the things were sort of in front of us. And so I sort of locked in and was really hyper focused on playing well. And it sort of left the fun until after the game.
Yeah.
But that was my experience.
That's cool. So take us down. So for those that are watching us on the Rocket Networker today, you can look it up. If you Google it, you can look this game up. But there's I call it a Trivial Pursuit moment that occurred in the game. And this was, correct me if I'm wrong on this, Ryan, but in modern NCAA overtimes, you didn't have overtime up till that postseason, right? They were doing the experiment with having an overtime. Yeah. So the Rockets won that game. They won the first NCAA overtime in modern college football history. Is that the correct way to say it?
That's correct. Yeah. So for the bowl season in that year, it's the first time that Division I games were not ties. So we were the very first Division I overtime game in NCAA history. And we won it.
What happened at the end of the game? I don't remember. Take me back. At the end of the game, were we ahead and they tied us, or were they ahead and we tied them at the very end of the game? Do you remember? I'm stretching back now in time.
Yeah, I think we were up and they came back. We had a fumble. They got a late score. So they tied us up. Right. And then we won the toss. We went on defense first. Our defense held them to a field goal. And then we scored a touchdown on 4 plays to win.
Right.
And we won 40-37.
Right. Yeah. So, ladies and gentlemen, in the Rocket Networker Nation, you're now sitting with a legend, the first quarterback to win a modern NCAA overtime game. That's claim to fame, right?
It's a claim to fame, right? It's something, I guess. It's a little something.
We're sticking to that, dude.
Yeah.
So now, all right. So take us out of that. You're going your senior year. You're dreaming about playing the NFL. Tell us about how college ended academically and sports. How did you transition out? Right.
Yeah, I mean, I sort of felt, hopeful that I'd have a shot to at least get into a camp. I didn't expect to be a high draft pick or a draft pick. Really, I had heard from a number of scouts and other sort of personnel folks that they sort of saw me as a free agent type, late, seventh round free agent type. So I was hopeful for that. I got a couple of calls and worked out for a few teams, and as things played out, I just didn't get the call. So you know, it was tough. It was hard to sort of try to pivot to that quickly. At the time, I played for a guy named Mike Dunbar. Mike Dunbar was our offensive coordinator my senior year, actually my whole career. He got the head coaching job at a 1AA school called Northern Iowa in that year. So I had stayed in touch with Coach Pinkel and Coach Dunbar, and Coach Dunbar offered me the opportunity to come and coach his quarterbacks in his first year as a head coach at Northern Iowa. And just said, hey, while you're working out and while you're figuring some things out, why don't you just come coach my guys for me? You know the system, you know what I want to do. I had never really aspired to be a coach prior to that, but I felt like it was a good opportunity. I wasn't ready to sort of cold turkey give up football.
Right.
So it was great. I ended up moving to Iowa, and I coached quarterbacks for him for 2 seasons, actually. So I got my degree in business at marketing concentration out of Toledo, and I had done some things while I was there. I worked for the Mud Hens and done some things. So I sort of felt like I wanted to stay in sports, but I wasn't sure really what that was. I had taken some interviews with some other companies that I had learned of, through my other jobs, Coca-Cola and Pepsi, and sort of management track opportunities that way. But I wasn't really sure, what I wanted to do. I wasn't ready to give up football entirely. So like I said, I went and coached football for 2 seasons. And then after that second season, I sort of realized that I loved football. I loved the competitiveness of it. I loved Saturday afternoons, but I didn't love the lifestyle.
Yeah.
It's not something that I wanted to do long term. So I sort of pivoted at that point and decided to sort of move back to Chicago, and I took a job with the White Sox as my first job in sort of front office type of working environment. So sort of pivoted from those 2 years of coaching and sort of right into a business side job on this in the sports industry.
That's kind of neat. Now, what were you doing there? Were you on the sales and marketing side?
I was on the sales side. So I started in ticket sales. So really for the White Sox, just, really kind of inline sales, just kind of trying to make ticket sales and try to learn the business as a young guy, and kind of jumped in and didn't make a whole lot of money, and just sort of immersed myself in the industry, at the bottom of the industry, and just started get started, get going in it.
So how long then did you stay with the White Sox? Like a while, and did you move up with them, or did you?
Yeah, I did. So I got promoted after 3 months into sort of more of a full-time account manager's role, and then I was still in the ticket sales in a more permanent role for I think about a year, and then I got promoted into more of a marketing sponsorship sales role with the White Sox. Right. So I was there in total about a little over 3 years, almost 4 years.
So you kind of cut your teeth there, and then where'd you go from there then? What was the next step?
Yeah, so then I went to the Bulls, Chicago Bulls, and so I worked for the Bulls and similar roles, sold sponsorships and advertising packages for the arena, the United Center, and the Bulls.
Now let me. So what era were you at the Bulls? Were they? I'm trying to get my mind.
Not good years.
What's it? Not the good.
Not good. Yeah, no championships. Unfortunately, I was really selling at that point. Yeah, Michael was long gone.
Oh,
yeah, I was there in I think it was 01, 02, 03-ish time frame. So some bad Bulls teams, some I call it some good selling, good sales, bad teams, right? So when Michael Jordan is long gone and we're selling folks like Tyson Chandler and Eddie Curry and Tim Floyd and those folks, they weren't quite as successful on the court.
Right, I got you. So all right, so now you cut your teeth in sales in baseball.
Yep.
And then we move over and you're growing your knowledge set in basketball at the professional level in the NBA. Now, how long did you stay? Did you move up with them? And what would you do there through your career? And how did you transition from there?
Yeah, so I didn't change roles within the Bulls. I was only there for a couple years. during that time, I actually got my MBA in the evening at DePaul. So I felt like I was spending a lot of time talking to business owners and chief marketing officers and people that were managing or responsible for businesses, and really that's where I felt like I started to hit my stride, the
Right.
understanding of how to help businesses grow through professional sports. That's sort of where I started to get pretty adept at making these connections and understanding both worlds. And so as I started to learn more about, the sports themselves, the facilities, the opportunities, and then started to, really through my MBA studies and just my experience, started getting pretty good at interfacing and connecting business to sports.
Right.
And then I had an opportunity, which, as you wouldn't surprise you, based on my background, I had an opportunity to go in the NFL, and
Okay.
so I took a job with the Bears in
Oh,
OT.
okay. I didn't realize that. I remembered you being over on the
Yeah,
basketball side. I didn't realize you went to. How long were you at the Bears?
I was at the Bears almost 10 years. So I had a couple different roles there. I got promoted into leadership there at the Bears, and so I was there. Yeah, like I said, almost 10 years, and really enjoyed my time. And at that time, the NFL, if you're, in my opinion, working in a professional sports league, the NFL is the best, in my opinion, from everything that we do, from the number of games to the TV product to the franchises themselves and the brands. I just really felt comfortable in an NFL environment and loved everything about the environment.
That's neat. You know what? I think there's a lot of people probably watching this podcast that are thinking, you know what, I really want that career, but as you know, having lived it from starting in sales to working up to your current position, it's a lot of time and commitment. It's not the sports world's a fun world, but there's a lot of work going on. It's not a playground, is it?
No, I mean, yeah, yeah. I mean, I just say too, when I'm looking, for folks to fill roles or otherwise, we've got a lot of fans. So we're looking for people that are good at what they do. There's passion for sports, which I certainly have, but it takes a skill set, and you're right, it takes a work ethic and a bit of determination to go through. And the reality of it is there are a lot of folks who want to break in. So the supply and demand economics of sports employment are not in the employee's favor.
Right.
So you
Right.
sort of have to work hard and make the best of your opportunities. And like you said, when we started the podcast, it's about relationships, and it's about making sure that you're fostering those relationships along the way, so that when the very few opportunities come about, you're in a position to take advantage of them.
Very well said. You know what's interesting? Talk a little bit about, your tips. When you look back over your career, what are the tips that you think that, like, gosh, if you had known these when you started with the White Sox, if I had known this way back, man, I would have just shortened my path. Right? We
Yeah.
can't go back in time, but I mean, what advice would you give people watching this, like about networking and your experience?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I always think, I love the term networking and reaching out, but to me, your true network is the people that you work with. And so I think sometimes people get really focused on external networking, and they really need to make sure that they're doing a great job in the role that they're in.
Right.
And if you can't be really good at the tasks that you're given and do right by the people that have assigned them or that you work next to or work for you, your how large your external network really doesn't matter,
Well
right?
said.
So
Well,
so and I just believe that. I think there's no harm in having a large external network, whether that's through LinkedIn or otherwise, but those people aren't invested in your success.
right.
People that for example, that I've hired and that I've worked alongside or that worked for me for 5, 6, 7, 8 years, I'm heavily invested in them being successful, whether that's here or elsewhere. And so that's a network that helps you really grow. So the other thing I would say too is, there are plenty of people that are really adept at identifying problems, identifying issues. There are fewer people that are really good at solving them. So the focus is in really trying to focus on being a doer, being someone who's a problem solver,
Right.
Not just a problem identifier, but someone who can get things done. And that can be the simplest things to the most complex things.
Right.
And, you're not always going to get the plum assignment, especially early on in your career.
Right.
But if you're doing everything that's assigned to you at a very high level and you're doing it consistently, you're going to build a great network.
Well said, man. Well said. It's interesting that when you talk about networking, reputation is a lot of what you just said. Your reputation can carry your network and in and of itself make introductions. You get known as to be a hard worker who shows up an hour early and stays an hour late, and you just get things done, right? You're always helping people out, and that reputation, when you build it with your boss and internally, as people move through their career, they're going to bring you with them, right? Like in football, coaches bring great coaches with them, right? When they go, and I'm sure, part of your experience is that too, right? People brought you along, and me too, right? They bring you along. So really, really good insight.
I'd also say too, before I leave that topic,
please go ahead.
The other thing that I think is important for young people to keep in mind is that we end up spending a lot of time with our coworkers. And so, human intelligence and just being someone who's enjoyable to be around goes a very, very long way in the professional environment.
Amen.
And that's something that I think sometimes is overlooked. I've learned that over time. I've worked with super, super smart people who for whatever reason, people didn't enjoy being around, and their career trajectories were affected mightily. True. And by the way, in comparison, I've worked with some people who are great people to be around, who may have lacked a little bit of that tactical skill. And those great people, their careers were not affected as proportionally as the people who were not good people, right? That human intelligence and being someone who's pleasant to be around goes a very, very long way in accelerating career growth and offering up opportunity and things of that nature.
Well said. People want to be around positivity and people they can learn from and just be relaxed around and enjoy, right?
No question about it.
Right. Especially to your point, when we're spending 8 to 10 or 12 hours a day together. You want to be around people you like to be around.
Exactly right. Yep.
Good stuff. So, all right, we're nearing our end of our time, but I could do this for 4 hours because I just love these conversations. People that know the Rocket Network, or they know me, they know I'm fascinated by people's life stories. So, couple quick things. People watching this, since you've worked in the professional sports world, they want to know the cool people that you've met. I mean, they want to know the cool football players and all. And then, so just think off the top of your head, like just for yourself, even just like, wow, I got to meet so-and-so. That's so cool. I mean, who do you think over your career?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'm maybe not as good at that. I sort of probably am attracted or as most proud of the people that maybe aren't as famous, but are just, for lack of better terms, kind of really good dudes. I sort of enjoy that, just good people.
Oh, who are the good dudes? That's cool too. I mean, who are the good dudes?
Yeah, I mean, here in Pittsburgh, Cam Hayward is a great, just a great dude, a really good guy to be around. Bruce Gradkowski's a great guy. I've got to know Bruce over the years. He's a great guy. Previous to that, in Chicago, a guy named Peanut Tillman.
Yeah.
A guy named Alex Brown. Just really good guys.
Good human beings, huh?
Yeah, just really good people, and to your point, have great life stories and great things going on in their world. I always think about it this way too. I'm around what a lot of people would be famous. I get asked the question, are you around the players? You're on the players. What my time, this will be last year, I think it was my 20th NFL season.
Wow.
So being around a lot of NFL players, they are literally the cross section of any other group of people you'd want to meet.
Life. Yeah.
They're all walks of life. And the fact that they are extremely big, strong, fast, and talented, it's still, they're just a cross section of folks that you meet in any other walk of life, right? So I've sort of learned that, right? You're gonna have really good guys. You're gonna have guys that maybe aren't so nice. Really smart guys. Maybe guys aren't so smart. I mean, it's a cross section of America, and I say it all the time. Separate the art from the artist. Just because they're great at football doesn't mean they're,
Right.
not good people or are good people. They're just people, right? So you're going to,
Doing a job.
you just learn that, and they have a job and we have a job, and they're certainly talented. There's no question about it. They have, physical gifts that are incredible. But at the end of the day, they're just people, and trying to live life and trying to have good friendships and good families and good vocation, and, do well by themselves and their family and all those things. So by and large, most of the people I run into are pretty regular, good people.
That's awesome. That's, you know what? Everybody wants to hear that answer, right? And if I think for folks like you and me, I'm in tune with your answer. I like hanging out with genuine, real people. They're famous. I always say to folks, if you're super wealthy, none of your money is in my pocket.
Yeah, right.
So I have tremendous respect for you for what you've accomplished. But I'd rather hang with good people, whether they're poor or rich. Right?
Yeah.
Hang with good people like yourself. Same way.
Separate the art from the artist, right? Sometimes the art's great and the artist isn't great. Sometimes it's the reverse. I don't know. It is what it is. I just sort of take it with a grain of salt at this point. Yeah.
That's cool. Now, before we end, I want to back up again. This is great dialogue. I really appreciate your time in that. But take me to your family. We talked in the beginning about your wife and high school and that. Tell us about your wife, your kid, just a high level. Just tell us about your family.
So I've got 4 kids. I've got 4 daughters. Great kids. I'll start with my youngest and work to my oldest. My youngest is Mia. She's a sophomore in high school, doing really well. She plays basketball at the high school team. My second youngest, Meredith, is a junior. So she also plays basketball and soccer, good athlete, and sort of starting to figure out the whole college thing. Right now, my third is Morgan. She's at Michigan State, my wife's alma mater.
Nice.
Morgan was a valedictorian last year as a graduate at Upper St. Clair High School. So she's a great student. She's actually a chemical engineering major in honors college up in East Lansing. So super smart kid, doing really well, really enjoying East Lansing, in a sorority, doing great. And then Maddie, my oldest, actually wants to follow in my footsteps. She went to Syracuse for their sport management program, really flourished there, did really, really well in all the things that they offer, getting involved in the athletic department, doing her internships, really did a much better job than I did, sort of getting started in sports with great experience. And so she's actually working with the Eagles right now for her, they call it a capstone. So for her last semester at school, she has to be working full time in the sports industry. So she got a job with the Philadelphia Eagles in their ticket sales department, which is a great place to start. And then she'll graduate from Syracuse in May. And then she actually she'll start in July with the NFL, with the league office. She got a full-time job with the NFL. So she'll be moving to Manhattan in July and starting with the National Football League. So she's
pretty cool.
off to a great start in sports. She's understood as the oldest that, to your point earlier, that sports isn't always the glamour. She loves sports. She's way into it, but she's been that kid who's always wanted to go early with me to the games and sit in my office for a few hours and walk around behind the scenes. And she just has understood sort of the work and the grit of sports and loves all of it. And so she just has immersed herself fully into it. And I'll probably be working for her here in a few years, I would think, maybe.
That's your backup plan, right?
Yeah.
So we're getting to the end of our journey here on the Rocket Networker podcast. Any last thoughts? You see the trajectory of the conversation, informal and just talking about networking and life and career trajectory and lessons learned for our audience. I mean, any final thoughts here when you think about networking and your career and you just want to share with folks?
Well, I would say, first of all, you should definitely recognize the 2 helmets on the top of my shelf up there. Those are both Toledo Rocket helmets, and that's a framed photo of the Glass Bowl.
Right.
And I didn't just put that up here for this podcast. We actually had a sports marketing conference here a couple weeks ago, and Brian Blair, the new AD at Toledo, I really enjoyed getting to know him. He stopped over my office and thought I put that up just for him. I said, no, it's always up there. It's what I keep at the top there.
Yeah.
But yeah, very very proud of my experience at Toledo. Very proud of our accomplishments there. I still stay in very close contact with a number of my teammates. It's an experience that shaped my life very very positively. I had the opportunity to go to a bunch of different schools, ones that may have different academic reputations, and I don't regret my path at all. In fact, I'm appreciative of my path, and I know that the path that I chose was the one that got me sort of where I am today. I'm very happy with. I told Brian Blair that it was the right path for me. So extremely happy with how it all turned out for sure.
I think many folks in the Rocket Nation feel the same way, and I do. I share that experience, having moved all over the United States. So it's good stuff. Well, you know what? I'm grateful for you making time in the busy schedule here to join us and to share your journey. We may do this again sometime. Okay.
Sounds
There's
good.
not obviously to talk about out there. So I just want you to know how much I appreciate it. So for our audience, that's it for this episode of the Rocket Networker podcast. And just remember that it's time to launch connections so that you can ignite your success. And like we end every podcast with, I have a simple question. Are you ready?
To schedule a Rocket Networker training program or keynote speech, go to rocketnetworker.com. It's time to launch connections to ignite your success. Are you ready?